Hey, you looking good? Hey, happy Easter. Yeah. Hey, it's mind-blowing for me that we're singing, we're celebrating right now this weekend with about 1 billion plus people around the planet, which is amazing. Singing, celebrating, same thing, that Jesus has risen from the dead. And then this is mind-bending. I don't know if you can get your head around this, but we're also joining with the unseen angelic choir. They've been singing, celebrating long before you were born, long after we're going to be gone. We actually sang it, but it's Revelation 5. Worthy is the Lamb who is slain to receive all power and wealth and wisdom and glory and honor and praise. It's unbelievable. What's interesting to me, though, around this time of the year, knowing there's 1 billion plus people doing what we're doing, there's really probably several hundred million of that billion that the resurrection of Jesus, as amazing as it is, the resurrection of Jesus doesn't really impact their regular life, like their daily decisions, what they do during the week. I mean, most people, a lot of people are like, it's just an Easter thing. Like we come to a gathering like this, sing some songs, great music, and we'll hear a message, maybe get encouraged, go eat some honey baked ham when it's over. And then there's hundreds of millions of people in that billion category that are like, oh no, like Easter changes everything. Like the resurrection of Jesus, it changes everything that I do. Like changes my big decisions, changes how I live my life. It changes like if I can quote the Apostle Paul, where he's like, you're in the domain of darkness, and now I've been transferred into the light of God's grace. Like I was dead in my sin and my trespasses, but now I'm alive because of the resurrection of Jesus. And so what I want to do just for our few minutes together is I want to just ask you the question. Where do you think you are on that spectrum of belief? And in fact, we'll make this really easy. We'll just do a quick poll, okay? And just show of hands. This is a safe space to do this. Just a quick show of hands. How many of you would say, just with a show of hand, you would say, I believe that Jesus resurrected from the dead? Just go ahead. Okay, and listen, there's a lot of peer pressure in here. I know some of you are like, I don't believe it, but I don't want to look like Satan, so, but let's just imagine that some of you, like you didn't believe in the resurrection, okay? Just like you don't believe in the resurrection. Let me ask you, like if just pretending you didn't believe in the resurrection, how would your life look different than it does right now? Now, if you have to think too hard about that, there's a good chance you don't actually believe in the resurrection, right? Like there's this guy in the New Testament, a guy named Saul. Saul, he really had everything. I mean, that the world offered. He was super wealthy. He was influential. He was constantly getting promoted. He was affirmed by the religious crowd. He was persecuting all the Christians when the church was just getting started. And then on the way to persecute some Christians, he runs in. He has an encounter with the resurrected Jesus. I mean, he was like, I know Jesus died. He was dead. And then he has an encounter with Jesus, who is resurrected from the dead. And Saul becomes a believer in the resurrection. And he's like, I can't help it. Like this changes everything for me. So he goes from the guy persecuting Christians to being the most persecuted Christian on the planet. In fact, listen to what he says. This is a little later on. His name, he's basically changed his name to Paul. It's his Greek name, but he's written several letters in the New Testament. I want you to listen to what he says here. And this is where we're going to be. 1 Corinthians 15, beginning with verse 19. Listen to what he says as it relates to, he had this encounter with the resurrection of Jesus. He says, if in Christ we have hope in this life only, we are of all people most to be pitied. So he's like, if there's nothing after this, if there's no life after death, then he's like, why am I living the way that I'm living my life? He's like, I gave up wealth. I gave up influence. I gave up power. I gave up constantly people being like, you're the best, constantly being affirmed. He's like, if there's nothing after this, he's like, why am I living this way? He's like, if that's reality, if there's nothing after this, he's like, you should feel sorry for me. I should be pitied. He's like, but there is something after this. There is a resurrection. There is an eternity. And he's like, because I've seen the one that was the firstborn of the resurrection. I saw Jesus raised from the dead. And that does change everything. He doubles down on this in verse 32. He says, if the dead are not raised, let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. So again, he's like, if there's nothing after this, he's like, man, let's just get after it. Let's just like eat, drink, be merry. Let's pursue the greatest pleasure. He's like, don't worry about hurting people. Don't worry about the consequences. Like, don't worry. Like, man, just suck the marrow out of life. But he's like, the problem is there is something after this. There is an eternity. And in fact, how many of you, just curious, last night, it was a very small percentage. How many of you have ever heard of a guy named Ethan Hunt? Ethan Hunt, he's a secret agent. You may not have heard of him because he's secret. He's secret agent with the Impossible Mission Force, the IMF, not the International Monetary Fund, but the Impossible Mission Force. It's like the CIA, but way more secret. And he has saved the world many times, more times than I can count. He's one of my heroes. Like, he's so brave. He's so courageous. He's like a real man. And in fact, recently, and I don't know if you guys have heard about this. It's not on mainstream media. There is an AI chatbot trying to take over the world right now, and he is on the case. He's trying to save our American lifestyle right now. And Amy and I are watching. It's more like a documentary. We're watching Mission Impossible, the latest, and the chatbot is like on this train, and he's like going to take over the world, and there's some terrorists that are aligned with him. And so Ethan, he's on this motorcycle, and he's like, I'm going to because he can't just buy a ticket, I mean, AI has taken over the ticket counter as well. He's like, I'm going to get on the train though. So he gets his motorcycle. He's like, I'm going to ride up alongside of the train. I'm going to hop on the train. But the AI takes over the train. It's just so scary. It's going like 100 miles an hour now. And so Ethan, who, again, if you've never met him, he's so brave. He's so brave. He's like, well, I've got a good idea. I'm going to ride my motorcycle up a mountain. Now, we are not secret agents. We don't know why that's going to work. But he's like, I'm going to ride up the mountain away from the train. And we're like, oh, this is incredible. And he rides up the mountain, and he's like going. And you're like, where's he going? And then he just drives off the mountain. And I'm like, he's going to die. I cannot believe this, but good news. He had a parachute, okay? Under his like super fashionable outfit, there was a parachute. And he parachutes, I don't know how this works. He like guides the parachute. He catches up with the train going 100 miles an hour. And he's able to direct the parachute, and he crashes through the window of the train that terrorists are shooting. AI's taken over, and then you think like he's about to die. I've got pit sweats. I'm like holding onto the chair, and then it gets even worse. Then the bridge where the train is driving, it explodes. And then he falls out the back door. I'm like, he's about to die. America, it's over, right? And then in that moment, I was reminded of an article I read on Google News that Mission Impossible 9 is coming out in 2025. and he's in it. And I was like, scary. I know that's such a dumb illustration, but listen, that's actually how the resurrection is supposed to make us feel. Like, that's how it makes me feel. Like, things are coming at me, but I'm like, I'm going to be here for movie 6, movie 7, movie 8, movie 9. Like when I die, I don't actually die because of the resurrection of Jesus. And in fact, Paul doubles down even on this idea in verse 36 and 37. And Paul, now he's going to say, you're like a seed. He says this in verse 36. He says, you foolish person, exclamation point. Now let me stop on that and just tell you, The reason he would call you foolish is if you just believe in yourself. You would be foolish if you just thought this was it. But he says, what you sow does not come to life unless it dies. And what you sow is not the body that is to be, but a bare kernel, perhaps of wheat or of some other grain. So you don't have to be a farmer to understand this. Like what you do is you take a seed, and whatever that seed is, if it's a seed of corn, you put it in the ground, and you would have an expectation that corn is going to grow up, right? But what Paul's saying is he's like, if you put the seed in the ground, it doesn't produce anything if the seed doesn't die. The seed has to die for it to produce something. And he's going to say, and it's not just going to produce one thing, it's going to produce more of who you're designed to be. In fact, he says it this way in verse 43. He says, it's sown, now he's talking about us, it's sown in dishonor as a seed, but it's raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, it's put in the dirt, it's forgotten, but it's raised in power. It's sown in a natural body, talking about this, and it's raised a spiritual body. If there is a natural body, which there is, there is also a spiritual body. So this is the picture, and again, even if you're here and you're not a Christian yet, like we can all look at the body, not like my body, but you can look at your body and be like, this is an amazing creation. Like God made something, and it's like amazing and complex, and the fact there's all these systems that work together, and we're live and we grow, and it's beautiful in its own way. And yet Paul's like, or God's like, yeah, as amazing as this thing is, he's like, I made it just to be put in the ground. I mean, like if you think this is amazing, you should see the resurrection that's coming. Amen. Like Amy and I, we've been on this diet for a few months, and not to lose weight, but just to get healthy because we eat trash. And so we're like, the last few months is like no sugar, no bread, no preservatives, no fun. I mean, it's terrible. It's awful. And like, we're just like out front, grazing on our grass. Like, just like, that's how, it's awful. But like, admittedly, I feel better. I've got lots of energy. I'm grateful. I'm working out. It's great. And like, just like recently, she'll like walk in the bedroom, and I'm like admiring myself in the mirror, and I'm like, you look good, John, right? But then a couple weeks ago, I'm on a tennis court, and I, just because like I'm 50, like things start breaking for no reason. And like, I didn't even do anything. I was like, I walk on the tennis court and my wrist starts hurting. and it's like been very painful. And it's like, it's this reminder. It's like, as I'm looking in the mirror, I'm like, look at me. And God's like, you're a seed. Like you can Pilates it up. I mean, you can eat good, and fine, eat good. Like get the nip and the tuck, and get the cream that's gonna get rid of your laugh lines. Like whatever. But just know, like you're a seed. Like we're designed to go in the ground. Like if our attention and our affection is just like, I gotta live as long as I can, then like you're not really thinking about the reality. Like this is designed to die, so that those who trust in the resurrection of Jesus will be resurrected themselves. He goes on in verse 55. I love this. He says, "O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting?" Now I love this because Paul, he's mocking death. And I know like that's hard to do because death is a painful reality. But he's like, death, come at me. Like, give me your best. Because I know, like, I was part of the process. Like, I know Jesus died and you thought you won, but Jesus rose from the dead and he beat you, death. And so Paul's like, I don't have to be scared of death because I've trusted in the resurrection. I know I'm going to be resurrected, so I don't have to be scared. But let me just be really clear. Some of you should be scared of death. And I don't mean because, like, you're going to be eaten by sharks or, like that would be a terrible way to die. I'm just saying, like, when you die, however you die, whenever you die, the 1 second after you're dead, like you're going to be more aware of eternity than you've ever been. You're going to be more aware, no matter what you believe, you're going to be more aware that there's a creator in the universe and you're about to be judged by him for how you've lived your life. But the message of the Bible, and this is what's so beautiful about Scripture, the message of the Bible is like, this is why Jesus has come. Jesus has come to take the penalty of our sin so that we can be sons and daughters of God, so that we can, when we die, we won't die. We can be more alive than we've ever. So like when you die, if you've trusted in Jesus, if you trusted in the resurrection, and I don't just mean like, yeah, I just, I filled a card or raised my hand one day. Like, I mean like if you trust Jesus, and for those of you that are going to trust Jesus today, trust the resurrection today, what happens is when you die, literally like 3 seconds later, you're like, when I was alive, like, 3 or 4 seconds ago, like, I was a mess. I mean, even with Jesus, I was a mess, which is true. And I was really selfish, even with Jesus. I was selfish and I was broken and I hurt some people. But thank God he sent his son to take my sin, to take the penalty of my sin and my shame and my guilt, and to make me a new person and to call me son and daughter of God, so that when I die, I won't really be dead. So like when Paul says, death, where is your sting? I think about bees. Like this is sort of embarrassing. I subscribe to a bunch of channels on YouTube for beekeepers. I'm an aspiring beekeeper, okay? We have some real beekeepers in the room today. And I'm always like, tell me about this, and I've heard this, and so-and-so said this, what do you think? And I love beekeepers because if you watch any of the videos, they build a relationship with the hives. And eventually, they can go up to this hive after they kind of built some trust, and they can literally, without any protection, without any gloves, without any mask, they can go in and just like scoop out 1,000 bees with their hand and not get stung. Every once in a while, though, one of the bees will get agitated and will sting the beekeeper. And the person videoing, they'll be watching or videoing, and the person's like, oh, I just got stung, just like that, just like very like low tenor. Oh, I just got stung, and they're like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And they're like, yeah, it's just a little honeybee. And so they put all the bees back in, and then the person just very carefully, grabs the stinger, and he's like, yeah, it's just a tiny little honeybee. And I say that because when you are a person of the resurrection, when you've trusted in the resurrection of Jesus, you look at death and then you're like, it's just a little sting. Like, it's just something that's like, oh yeah, death now, like I own you, death. Like death's now the doorway into the resurrection. In fact, he goes on and he says this in a different way, in a different place, 2 Corinthians 4. Listen to this, my favorite chapter in the Bible. He says, so we don't lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. So listen, yes to, like, there is real pain. There's real loss. If we had time today and we could take a mic and, just hear everybody's story today, we would feel the weight of real painful seasons. Some of you are right in the middle of the worst trauma of your life. Some of you are coming out of that. Some of you are about to head into a season like that. I don't want to dismiss that or demean that, but what Paul says is when you really get your spiritual eyes on the resurrection, and you become a person of the resurrection because of Jesus, everything that we go through, we can really begin to say, it's just a light and momentary affliction. Like in comparison to the resurrection, like our pain and our loss, which is real, like it's almost nothing in comparison to the beauty and the power of the resurrection to change everything in our life. So let me do this. Let me transition. I'm just going to take a hard right turn here, okay? Because when I'm around like my friends who don't know Jesus, and I've got lots of friends that don't know Jesus, and I've got friends who think they know Jesus, like they've lived in the South long enough, too long probably, and they like think they know Jesus, but they don't follow Jesus, which is like, if you know Jesus, you're going to follow Jesus, right? Because Jesus is the best. Like he's the most powerful, gracious, He's amazing. I mean, he's everything. He's everything. And so like, if you're like, oh, I know Jesus, but you don't follow Jesus, then you don't know Jesus. Like, it's a distinction that's worth making. And so I've got friends who like, they just don't know Jesus. And I just by my own temperament, I can be a beggar. Do you know anybody that's just like a beggar? You know, like you get in that, and pleading and begging just doesn't look good on me. But I get there, like these people that I really care about, and I'm like, why don't you just accept Jesus? Why don't you trust Jesus, man? Like, look at your life. I mean, you're like, it's so filled with anxiety, and you've got this weird ambition to make a name for yourself, and you're trying to climbing this ladder, and like, what are you doing? Like, trust Jesus. Like, Jesus literally will make your life better. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to cancel all the stupid decisions you've made over the last 20 years, but like, he's going to make your life, it's life abundant. But more than that, really, the big deal is you're not going to be spiritually dead anymore. Like, why don't you trust Jesus? Just trust Jesus, please, just trust Jesus, right? And then I remember there's this little phrase that Jesus uses, and nobody else in the Bible uses this phrase. Jesus is the only one that uses it. He says, "He who has ears to hear, let him hear. He who has ears to hear, let him hear." And it's the idea that some of you are coming in, and for the last several months, God's been having these little divine encounters for you. Like, he's setting up circumstances where you're like wondering, like, is God real? Or is Jesus, is he somebody that's worth trusting? Or you've had these conversations with somebody at work, or like just stuff's been happening, and all of a sudden your spiritual ears are awakened, and you're coming in today and you're hearing everything that's being said today. And there's something coming alive in you, and having ears to hear, and now it's going to move you to respond. You're going to come alive by the resurrection today, which is amazing. Some of you, if I can be honest, you're coming in today that you don't have ears to hear. And I'm so glad that you're here. But you got invited, and you're like, yeah, it's just the thing to do. I was raised in the South, and so like that's just what I do. Like this is when I come to church. I don't come to church any other time. And like, again, God bless you. Like, we'll see you on Christmas Eve. Like, we're so glad that you'll be here. But like, you're not interested in Jesus. You don't have ears to hear it. And just to be honest, you're not interested in following Jesus. And like, again, God bless you. God bless you. Like, it would be a dishonor for me to try to manipulate you today. And I just respect you more than that. So like, we're not going to turn the lights down. We're not going to turn the smoke machine. We don't have a smoke machine, but if we had one, we're not going to turn it on. We're not going to, like, there's not going to be some like weird music and we're like, okay, we're going to sing this song again and again and again. We're going to get the emotions. Like, we're just not going to do that. And the reason is like what the Bible teaches is there is truth, and empowered by the Spirit, this truth can set you free. So I just want to just take the next 2 minutes. I just want to just tell you the truth. So here's what Paul says. Back to 1 Corinthians 15. He says, this is verse 3. He says, "For I delivered to you," this is what I'm about to do to you and for you. He says, "For I delivered to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures." So that's the whole message, by the way, of the weekend. Friday is Good Friday, where Jesus dies on the cross, taking our place. We deserve to go to the cross. Jesus was not a criminal, but he died a criminal's death. And the reason he died a criminal's death is because he took our place. We're the criminals. We're the perpetrators. We're the villains in this story. And Jesus on the cross took our place. And everything that we deserved was put on him. And then Paul goes on in verse 4, he says, "And then he was buried." Meaning only dead people are buried. He was buried. And then he was raised on the third day in accordance with the Scriptures. And so what happened is that Jesus, he's in the tomb 3 days. The Spirit of God raises him from the dead, and then he shows himself to 500 people. And the 500 people are like, "We saw you dead 3 days ago." There's not anybody on the planet that could survive what you went through. And yet he's fully alive, fully healed, resurrected body. And the 500 people, they just began to like go tell everybody, because they're like, that was impossible. But it's not impossible. Like, I saw Jesus alive, resurrected from the dead. And Jesus saying, like, if you trust me, if you'll follow me, he's like, you'll be resurrected from the dead as well. You'll be with me forever. And they're like, this isn't some like doctrinal statement we heard. Like, we saw the doctrine. We saw the one that was raised from the dead. And so now we're willing to die for this thing. All of us. Let me tell you what this looks like just in real life. Let me illustrate this. So just imagine with me. I'm just gonna. So I want you to imagine like this is eternity, okay? I'm not like clearly this rope. Just imagine this rope just keeps going on and on and on. Imagine it's not tied to a music stand, okay? But just imagine like this is eternity, and this is your eternity, because listen, every one of you will live forever somewhere. So I want you to imagine this is your eternity. And it goes on and on and on and on. But like this little red part, this is you on planet Earth. Like this is while you're alive on the earth. And it's so funny because like this little red part, we're obsessed with this red part. Like we love this red. We give all of our energy, our passion, all of our anxiety. Like we give all of it to this little red part. Like this 70 or 80, 90 years. Like this is our entire life. And we're like we hyper focus on this. And we're like, okay, I'm right here. This is where I am. And I according to LinkedIn, this is where I am, and I'm working and working and working and working and working. But then I get here, I'm going to start saving. And then I'm going to get right here. Then we're going to eat good. All right. This is when we're going to vacation and we're going to cruise. And this is retirement. Like I'm everything up to here, all the way up to here. Like, it's just for this last part. So, oh man, we're going to live so good. And then like 10 minutes later, you're dead. And I'm like, yep. And I'm like, okay, I get it. But what about the rest? Like, this is why the Bible's like, this thing, it's a mist. That's the Bible describes our life as a vapor. You know what a vapor is? You ever see somebody with a vape pen? It's like, and God's like, that's your life. Gone. And the point is like, this is the message of the Bible. Like what you do with this part of your life, like how you live your life, more specifically, what you do with Jesus in this part determines the rest. Like, make no mistake about that. Like since I've been a Christian, I've been a Christian for 30 years. Some of you know I grew up became a Christian out of a non-religious Jewish home, and many of my family, my extended family, for years, they were like, John, you're stupid. Like the way that you live your life as a Christian, like you're stupid. Like, because you live your life in a way, like you spend your money in a way, and you do things and choose not to do things, and you risk certain things, and like it's going to impact your life. It's going to impact this. And I'm like, you're the stupid one, because you do anything you want in this life, and it impacts everything else. It impacts eternity. And I tell you that because that's the message of Easter. The message of Easter is Jesus has said, in one decisive blow, I'm going to give you abundance in the here and now. I'm going to give you real life. But then I'm going to secure eternity for you. You get to live with me forever.